Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's Jmann. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm Jmann.
This is Steiny.
I feel like a lot of people these days don't have a true grasp of what karma is.
Not in the actual Eastern sense.
No, they think that karma is this thing, this vindictive, all-knowing power of the universe that's going to fuck over anybody that they feel has wronged them.
Put out negative energy or say, yeah.
Yeah, they're like, well, you didn't give me what I want, and you're treating me like shit by making me feel bad, so karma's going to get you.
Or karma's
you did
a bitch.
This. Yeah. It's always like karma is the spirit of vengeance.
Yeah.
And that's not what it fucking is.
No, absolutely not.
Karma in and of itself is not there to act on your behalf. It acts in the larger sense of the universe itself. Whereas if you do good and you put good into the universe, good is supposed to come back to you. Mm-hmm. And a big thing about it is like acts of kindness.
And it's for a lifetime of deeds. It's not for a day, a week, a month, right?
Okay, so karma is non-transferable. That is, you're responsible for your own karmic experiences. No one else can experience your karma for you, nor can they remove it for you, or vice versa. It's not going to act and go get your ex that cheated on you, and karma's going to fucking come back to bite you in the ass. Or even if somebody like keys my car, and I'm like, oh man, I hope karma gets them. It's not like one of the three ghosts of Christmas past coming to fucking teach Ebenezer Scrooge a lesson on behalf of Jacob Marley.
Right. Well, and like I was saying, isn't karma for a lifetime of deeds? So, if karma gets them, what? They're going to come back as something lower on the chain? You know? I mean, that's what it's supposed to be, right? Not just not that something else bad happens to them, you know, in this life.
So karma is defined as the sum of a person's actions in this and previous states of existence, viewed as deciding their fate in future existences.
Right. So it's not that something bad's going to happen to them next week or, you know, it's in the next lifetime.
How does karma work? In Indian religions, the term more specifically refers to a principle of cause and effect, often descriptively called the principle of karma, wherein individuals' intent and actions cause or influence their future. So, their actions, the cause, influence the effect. Good intent and good deeds contribute to good karma and happier rebirths.
Otherwise known as reincarnation.
Well, bad intentions would be bad experiences and bad rebirths. So, you know, let's say you got somebody that abuses their kids in this life by beating them. You would think that, for a random hypothetical, they are reincarnated as a dog that is owned by somebody who's abusive,
right?
That kicks the shit out of them so they see what it felt like.
Right.
And then you would think then if that dog dies, they have the introspection, allegedly,
right,
to have experienced their own behavior and now had some change of heart or mindset where they become reincarnated again. And maybe they come back as another dog of a loving family that treats them so good because it understands. And there's like another puppy that they could bite or a kid they could bite that teases them and they don't.
Okay, because that was going to be my next question is, how does the dog go on to a better karmic state in the next existence? How does a fly, how does a cockroach, you know what I mean? What are they putting out in the universe? That's one part of where karma kind of falls apart, you know what I mean? But what do you have to do to reach that next higher plane? Right?
Well, let's go back to the dog that gets beaten and realizes, oh my God, I did this. Now, first off, I think most people would be like, that's fucking bullshit. Dogs aren't going to remember a past life, and I don't even believe in past lives. And let's say the dog is a reincarnated being and does have memory of its past life. If then it learns from that knowledge, it can be reborn. Well, what if it rebirths back up to a human again and it gets the chance to come back and be better. Right? Does that seem to fall in line with what your understanding would be?
I would guess. I mean, there might be some other jumps in between there, like maybe you go through, chimpanzee or something a little bit closer to human, but you know what I mean? That would be my understanding, right?
Yeah, and you'll hear people say like, "Well, you have to be careful. Like you just stepped on a spider. That could be somebody's grandfather that was reincarnated." Like, I mean, I guess. But
yeah, I bet
Jesus
that same
Christ.
spider could have also been ate by a bird, could have died of hunger because it built its web in a bad spot. I mean, let's be honest. There are so many different ways insects can die out there.
So here's another one. Hinduism identifies karma as the relationship between a person's mental or physical action and the consequences following that action. It also signifies the consequences of all those actions of a person in their current and previous lives and the chain of cause and effect in morality.
What?
I realize I'm just reading Google questions and then riffing off of this, but here we go. What is an example of karma? Putting money in a church collection plate and coming home from that day's service to find some money you had forgotten you had. Maybe?
Okay, so now that sounds like instant karma, right? Like
Yeah.
the more Western version of karma. And that's what I'm getting at. It's not so much, and maybe I have a misunderstanding about Eastern karma, and even though you defined it there, it does kind of sounds like a summation of one's life, but it also sounds like this cause and effect, right? Like I did good, so I get good back within the day,
But, yeah, and just like you said, I think instant karma is totally a Western concept because you always hear people throw that out there when, oh, this guy just cut off this other guy in traffic and then he ran into the back of another car that cut him off.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, that's just shit luck.
Or being a shitty driver because
Yeah.
I
mean, you've already demonstrated that you have no regard for spacing between vehicles and follow distance and the speed laws. Well, that's just the law of probability catching up with your dumb ass.
Exactly. Yep. You take risks, eventually they'll catch up.
So here's a good one. Sharing extra produce from your vegetable garden with a local food bank, only to have your garden become even more productive and bountiful. Okay, so that would be in the grand sense of like how life interacts. Plant with animal, animal with human. But again, it's like, okay, so I'm going to give some examples. Now, this whole episode obviously stems from dealing with
The beast.
Most things do, right?
is always telling me karma's going to fuck you. And it's like this lingering anger that I was given sole custody of our daughters after a myriad of issues that she had over a period of time. And I kept good notes, and I presented my case factually, not opinion-based. And the judge was like, yeah, I agree.
Gotcha, bitch.
Okay, I didn't lie like she's accused me of, but it's just like ever since we went to court for that, karma's gonna get you. Karma's gonna fuck you over. You lied in court. She accused me of knowing the judge.
You're a stupid dumbass.
How?
She's like, did you know that judge or something? Because I don't even know how you got half the shit you did. And I'm like, how would that even work? Because if a judge knew me, they would immediately recuse themselves
have to.
due to the conflict of interest. Because if they heard the case, and then you could say, hey, wait, he knew her or him. And then there's basically, you don't even need to prove it. That allegation right there is damning enough.
Right.
So she's not going to do that. But the point being here is, because she doesn't get what she wants, and she is seemingly stuck in the intellectual and emotional state of a petulant teenager, she wishes bad on me and other people that don't give her what she wants or live up to her expectations, and that's not fair. Now, here's an example. My mom, I claim, was, and I'm not going to use the A word a bunch, abuse. By today's standards, there was a lot of what could be considered emotional abuse.
Oh, sure.
Not full-on neglect, but coercion and gaslighting and manipulation.
I think a
in
lot of
my
us who
teen
grew up
years.
in '80s, but you specifically with your mom.
Fuck
Yeah.
yes.
Yep.
Yes. And the thing about that is that here's the karma. She did that to me. And now I have the sense with the education of time and wisdom to consider it in retrospect that it was not okay. So I've told her all the ways it was not okay. And then she pulls the granny gaslight bullshit like, well, You make that up, or that never happened.
True.
Not even giving credence to what I'm alleging. And I recall it in great detail, and I tell the story the same way every time. That's not indicative of somebody's that's lying. Because your story changes, you embellish details, and other people are like, that never fucking happened. Nobody said that. But now here's the payoff, is that we don't have a good relationship. Now,
I was just going to say that.
Is that karma?
Yeah.
Acting where I don't have the willingness to just forgive and forget? Is that how the universe is affecting my ability to process that? Or is that me, as a human being with free will, completely independent of karma, just deciding she's going to get what she deserves, she's going to reap what she sows? Now, the karma could come back around on me, where now my kids are aware of what I've told them, how she treated me. And even though I'm using it as a learning tool to say, don't treat people that way, and that's why I'm not like that with you, well, then my ignoring her now in her old age, they might be like, well, you dumped a lot of your fucking trauma shit on us, and we didn't necessarily need to hear that. And
they wanted
you did your own
relationship
stuff.
with their grandma. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So now we're mad with you. But I don't discourage them from going over there. I make sure to say, just because I didn't have a good life with her doesn't mean that you can't have a good relationship with her. But they've both at one time or another said to me something to the effect of, I totally get why you don't like grandma. Or, yeah, we totally see why you say what you say about grandma.
Well, yeah, because once you point out some of those things and then they get to see it firsthand, or they start paying attention a little bit more and see some of those behaviors, some of those things, then, yeah, they're going to definitely pick up on it.
With your situation with your son's mother,
My son.
for years, she treated you like a fucking ATM.
Oh, yeah. She had the benefit when we first went to our child support hearings. First of all, she claimed she was never going to need child support, which was a joke anyway, right? I should have known better. And I knew better, but it was nice to hear her say that, when we were breaking up, like she was so fiercely independent and she wasn't going to need any of my help and this, that, or the other.
A lot of them pull that shit right out of the gate.
Yeah. But it's not how it's going to go. And she had the luxury of she was working 2 part-time jobs at the time. So they basically took the one that she worked at more and used that as her primary income. And I was working full-time. And so basically that was like the standard for like a couple years until she actually got like full-time work. And so she was actually making almost double what she claimed she was, and also getting the child support on top of it. I'm not saying she wasn't working for it. There was like, oh, she was working, 2 jobs. Yeah, but when you're only working 20 hours at each, to get to 40 hours, and you're claiming half that of what you would for a full-time job. And she was getting assistance from the government as far as for her own medical insurance, and I believe because she was able to as well. So I was spared a little bit at the beginning under that situation. But yeah, for the most part, it was always about the money for her, even up to the very end. Yeah.
So here's where I'm tying that into this concept now.
Yep.
Like the stimulus checks that she fucking took, basically, and gave you none of.
Oh yeah, that's a fun one. Yeah, so the insurance, or not insurance over the years, but the tax returns over the years, I never got any extra. I never split any of the, or got to split any of the childcare credits. The what is that child? There's like a K through 12 credit or something like that. Like whether they're in school, there's like an in-school credit, and absolutely all those stimulus checks from the pandemic, all that stuff, she got directly, and I never got 1 cent of, not one.
Okay, here's the tie-in. Karmaically speaking, when it came time for you to go to court, for the last 2 months of child support once he was emancipated, could it be that was the universe going, he's dealt with enough?
Yeah, but I can tell you there was also something behind that. That was me being entirely fed up and knowing I had good arguments. I had sound facts on my side, and I was not going to let her get away with it this time. You know what I mean? And I felt because of that, I was prepared. I had gone through this before and had not had kind of the best results, so I wasn't going to let that happen. So you're right. On one hand, it could have been karma. Maybe we got a good magistrate, but I feel like there was no way I could lose either.
Well, there's that.
I mean, you had to feel pretty confident when you went in with facts to your hearings to know that you had a solid argument, right? Like if the magistrate was going to take your side, it was because you presented a solid and sound argument.
Yeah, and because of repeated misdeeds and lying and trying to cover it up and dodge all the things
Exactly.
that she was supposed to be doing to get the kids back.
Right. So where's the karma in that, and being prepared and being in such a shitty situation that the facts are on your side for once? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, as a dad, that doesn't happen a lot in this state.
With you guys breaking up and how she handled it and how she treated you right after, one could be like, well, she's getting what she deserves with the relationships that she's had after. But that goes against what I'm saying, how karma doesn't punish you like that.
Right.
Right? That's just her being a shitty partner and taking advantage of people.
Exactly. And always looking out for herself. No matter what relationship she's ever been in, and this includes her own family, number one. That's it. I mean, that's ultimately... I've known a lot of selfish people in my lifetime. She is by far one of the most selfish. And so, is it karma to say that she's had nothing but shitty relationships since, when technically all of her relationships have ended shitty, or else she wouldn't be on whatever one she is now, right? Is it karma because she's just not a good person? She's too self-focused, right? You could say, yeah, she will never be in a good relationship or one that is beneficial, but she's not living her life by the same standards as the rest of us, right? She's not finding that deeper enjoyment and commitment with somebody else. She's just looking for whatever's going to make her feel better about herself.
Or whatever she can get, I guess.
Exactly. How she can get ahead.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's kind of silly to apply karma to that. So that's why I have some examples of, let's take Mary Jo Copeland. You know who she is.
It sounds familiar. You might have to refresh my memory.
She is the one that runs Sharing and Caring Hands.
Okay.
She is, in my opinion, the closest thing to a living saint that I have ever had knowledge of, especially in this area.
Okay.
Right?
Sure.
She has dedicated her entire life to God and faith, but more importantly, to helping others. She is to the Twin Cities and more at large Minnesota homeless and poor community to what St. Francis of Assisi was to animals. She is basically our living patron saint of the poor and the downtrodden around here. So I have to believe if there is karma, she is going to come back, and it may seem like a step down. You would think, oh, she's going to come back as like a queen or something. Or that woman is either going to become a star in space, beaming light for thousands of years, or something as simple as a monarch butterfly. She
Right.
will come back as a caterpillar that cocoons and then becomes a butterfly and brings that beauty fluttering around and migrating, and people seeing her and going, oh, monarch butterfly.
She'll become a muse. Okay.
Or like a bird
Right.
that sings, and that song inspires people just to feel happy or to feel comfort. That's how I feel she will be. She could even become, oddly enough, like, let's say, a roll of thunder. If you say that you come back as something else, it might not just be an animal. It could be like as a blade of grass or as a
I
plant.
wondered about that. Yeah.
Or
exactly.
something more scientific and less biological, like that roll of thunder, right?
Okay.
Some people hear thunder and they're scared, like kids, or a dog hears thunder and it goes and hides under the bed. But to some people that love thunderstorms and it brings them great comfort, that roll of thunder that tells you a storm is coming and brings you that comfort. And it's a short existence, but it's energy that's in the atmosphere that is recycled then into something else.
Sure.
Maybe somebody's a good person, they become a bolt of lightning that strikes dry grass and starts a forest fire, which is destructive. And the animals run, and the humans have to put the fire out, but then everything is rebirthed new, helps the forest come back. Like it's this grander sense. That's why I do things like complimenting people on their shoes. It sounds fucking stupid, but I'm like, hey, I like your shoes. I'm giving positivity to them, and I'll never once have I heard, fuck you. They're like, oh, thanks.
Well,
It's
yes.
simple just to make somebody feel good, and those acts of kindness.
Yep. You don't have to point out something physical about them as far as their appearance, right? Maybe not everybody's built the same way, but everybody's wearing shoes, right? Most people are wearing, decent enough shoes, right? And if they're wearing nice shoes, yeah, definitely, absolutely.
Unless they're a dirty hippie, and then they have on fucking sandals, and they got those dirty Jerusalem-looking feet.
Well, then you're not probably going to make that comment, right? That's
Nice
certain side of the-
toenail fungus.
right.
Fuck,
I like the way you wax the... No.
Another thing I like to do is, and this is almost like OCD now. Like, I'm always picking up garbage at work, like straight label paper that's laying around after people put shit on boxes. Okay, there's been many times I have been at the park with my kids or on a walk by myself, and I just start picking up garbage because there's too many people that don't fucking care, and this is the earth that my children will inherit from me. And if I can make a positive addition to the ecosystem around me, might then I get the benefit of a sunny, warm day when I have it off and I have my kids as opposed to rain.
Well, the question is do you appreciate it in that moment? And how would you ever know that? And that's why you were given that sunny day was for those acts of kindness or benevolence. You know what I mean?
I just thought of something.
Yeah.
How much free shit do I pull off of curbs and driveways?
I don't know.
A lot. I am the king of free shit.
Oh,
you are giving away exercise equipment, I will get that shit.
Well, yeah, of course, you with exercise equipment, yeah.
But other stuff like ramps for changing my oil with my car or shop lights and shit, all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
So maybe that's my payoff, is that I've picked up enough refuse that then other people are giving things away, and that's why we have 9 bikes.
Right?
It's just like, oh, there's a bike that my kids can use. And then when my kids are done with it, I can pass it on to somebody else. Yep. It's this ever-flowing circle of continuation of generosity that brings to me perhaps more luck and generosity.
There's something to be said for being in that cycle, right? There are some people that live completely outside of that cycle because they don't give anything away because then they're not probably being given anything. You know what I mean? They don't have that mindset, right? Where you're right, absolutely. When my son was younger,
Oh, my son.
I have a friend whose son I knew real well. He was a couple of years older than my boy. My son got tons of hand-me-down clothes through him, so I didn't have to buy hardly any clothes.
My son.
You know, when he was in his grade school and middle school years, which is a huge deal.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a lot of money saved. And where did those clothes go? They went to one of my wife's close girlfriends, a woman that I worked with years ago at Menards as well. Her son, who is about 4 years younger than my boy, got a bunch of his stuff. And there was a ton of clothes that he could use. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it just continues onward and hopefully benefits somebody else. And I grew up with that kind of mindset. We grew up, one of my families, they were farmers, right? So there was constantly kind of sharing with the neighbors and other neighbors sharing stuff they have with you and everything else back and forth. You know, it's just kind of a mindset.
I think that's one part of karma that people don't necessarily think about that's so easy to benefit others is a sense of generosity. And to you, it's just, well, I'm just getting rid of some shit. Okay, but these clothes that you watched your kid wear,
right,
and you have memories of them in that sweater, and then
Pictures,
it goes to
images.
a family member that has a kid. Like, my cousin is younger than me, and he had his first kid, and she's, I don't know how old, and they're going to have another one now, also a girl. So I'm like, oh, you get to recycle that shit
right,
and reuse it. But my folks are giving a bunch of toys from the girls that they bought, that they grew out of, to him, to help him save money. So they're passing that along, and that's less shit I have to throw away when they die.
Yeah.
So it works on 2 fronts.
Yep. Many levels, many levels.
I just think that if more people thought about the concept of deeds, and that's a big thing for Jews, good deeds. I do good deeds in this life so that I may be happy and comfortable in the next. The reason that I have such an understanding that I do, it's still a very rudimentary understanding, but I went to Catholic school, but I had a class called Comparative World Religions.
Oh.
And I was taught this by Mr. Rubio at Totino Grace. He might be dead now because he was old when I had him.
Have you thought about that? I thought about a lot of my high school teachers being...
One of my favorites recently died.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And he was a guy that taught philosophy and and then took sabbaticals to write books.
Oh.
Apparently sci-fi books. And that was Michael Shimmick. So Mr. Shimmick, one of my favorites.
Do you have any of his books?
I do not. I thought about looking into it. I didn't realize he wrote sci-fi shit. But Mr. Rubio introduced me to the principles of Buddhism and the Eightfold Path and karma and Hinduism and reincarnation. And then I got to college and I took another class. And then I got the book, The World's Religions by Houston Smith, that breaks it down for you. and gives you like a very simple yet fleshed out view of the major religions and some of their lower branches of the same tree. And then I have now passed that book on to my 13-year-old and said, if you want to figure out how religion could play a part in your life, read this book and then see what philosophies or ideas you feel you identify with, and then explore them. Don't just commit. But unlike my parents that forced Catholicism on me and then I rejected it because of that, I'm giving them a much easier time to figure out what works for them so that they will appreciate that I imparted that wisdom unto them and they were able to have that free will to associate the concept of faith with what they feel, not have it thrust upon them.
Which is what the majority of the world has done to them.
Right, and I'd like to think that that is a great sense of parental karma.
Hopefully.
Or it will come back to me and they will say, thank you, Dad, I totally love this. And hopefully it's not through a pane of glass where they joined a cult and killed some people, or they got arrested for being one of those fucking Hare Krishnas at the goddamn airport beating on bongos, annoying the fucking Paul Blart cops.
Exactly.
I don't know. Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It. That is at What Do We Call It. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/What Do We Call It podcast show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm Jmann.
This is Steiny.
And that's the end.